So it is full time in the second leg of the AFF Suzuki Cup final, and Thailand, as if we didn't know before this game, Thailand are winners. They are winners for a record 6th time in this tournament, which is an incredible achievement. And if you look at their success over the recent campaigns, it is unbelievable. Runners-up in 2012, Dangda, top scorer. Winners in 2014, Chanatip, best player. 2016, they won again, Dangda, top scorer, and Chanatip, best player. And then, of course, the semi-finals in 2018 with Adizak as top scorer. And losing in the semi-finals just on away goals, so just so unlucky for them in 2018. But again, in the 2020-2021 tournament, they have won the final 6-2 on aggregate, 4-0 in the first leg and 2-2 in the second leg. That is technically the highest scoring margin ever in an AFF Suzuki Cup final. And my first thing that I'm going to say, actually, before I get into Thailand, why they won this tournament, the few things behind, certainly what I believe is behind their success in this tournament, I just want to shout out both Singapore, the host nation, who I thought performed admirably, considering they were one of the underdogs, and of course Indonesia, who, you know, such a young side. We'll get onto that later on, but an absolutely brilliant performance and a really good performance today, going into a second leg when you're already 4-0 down. And just producing really a performance that all the fans can be proud of. I think those two sides I want to shout out in particular. But of course, this video is not about them. It is about Thailand and their success. And this tournament's finished. And again, Chanatip and Dangda, both joint top scorers with 4 in this tournament. And Chanatip again picking up a record-breaking 3rd player of the tournament, MVP of the tournament award. I mean, what a player he is. Let's just run through their campaign then. Of course, in the group stage, they had Timor-Leste, Myanmar, Philippines and Singapore, the host nation. And it was really quite comfortable for them. I think that Timor-Leste shocked everyone throughout this whole tournament. And I think that they will be a side that people will be looking out for in the upcoming under-23s, which I believe is in February time. But that was a 2-0, then 4-0 over Myanmar. Then a good win, a good performance from Dangda in a 2-1 win over the Philippines. I've already done a video on that game. And then an easy victory on the final game against hosts Singapore to put them through top of the group with 12 points out of 12, scored 10, conceded just 1. And they didn't really have to show much of their quality across these games, really. It was that they got the job done. You know, apart from the Myanmar game, which of course they won 4-0, it was just, they scored 2 in every game, and it was just very solid and very comfortable. They didn't really have to flex their muscles at any point. And that's why going into the semi-finals against Vietnam, I wasn't really sure what to say about them as a side, because there's a few players that had impressed me, but they hadn't really done anything that stood out. But you don't win tournaments. As you can see from the Philippines, you don't win tournaments by beating sides 7-0. That's not how you win tournaments. You win tournaments by consistently winning games, 1, 2-0, just solid at the back and building off that foundation of a good solid defence and just winning games, not losing games, just winning games. And that is how you win tournaments. And I suppose that is the first point to mention, really. Of course, you know, it came close today in the second leg. Indonesia could have snatched a winner at times, but Thailand didn't lose a single game. They won every game in the group. Then they got Vietnam, the favourites for this tournament, Vietnam. And across 2 performances against them, they didn't concede a goal. They won 2-0 and drew 0-0. That being the first draw that they had in the tournament. Didn't concede a goal to Vietnam. Now, Vietnam had loads of shots, plenty of shots on target. It was a really resolute defensive performance from Thailand, particularly in the second leg. But that's how you win. That is how you win tournaments. It has to be a foundation of not conceding and a foundation of resolute at the back and we'll score when we need to going forward. Then in the first leg against Indonesia in the final, it was a game that just got away from Indonesia the more the game went on. But we're talking about 2 sides here that are at very different points in sort of the footballing progression and where these sides want to get to. And Indonesia are a side that in the future will hope to be more competitive. And then the second leg, you know, it's difficult for both sides going into this one. Thailand probably would have wanted to have won this second leg. 2-0 and just comfortably walked through. They didn't. Indonesia made a really good game of it, and I think credit has to be given to Indonesia rather than discredit given to Thailand for this second game, which was a brilliant game. You know, the FA president that's come in since 2017, Somyot, must be pleased with the way things have been going. He's had to make a few changes, of course, after their disappointing 2018 performance at the Suzuki Cup. But they seem to have got a system now that that works quite well. But the first major point I'd like to touch on is the experience and the level of some of the players, not in terms of individuals, but as a team. And I just want to talk about particularly 4 players and compare that to some of the players we've seen for Indonesia in this tournament. You've got Tiraton, one of the best players in this tournament by a long way, playing left back, left wing back at times. He's 31 years of age, experienced player, 66 caps. Chanatip, we've already spoken about. He's 28, 56 caps. Adizak, 30 years of age, 42 caps. And of course, a player that you can't leave out, Tirasil Dangda, 33 years of age, now all-time AFF Suzuki Cup top scorer, and has got 110 caps. And that, I think, is one of the big differences between Thailand and other sides at this tournament is, you know, this is not the first time at the rodeo for a lot of these players. As I went through earlier, Dangda was top scorer all the way back in 2012. That now, as we stand here on the first day of 2022, that's a decade ago that tournament's taking place, and Dangda was top scorer back then. So that kind of experience, Chanatip's been in and around it. You know, best player in 2014. He's been best player again in this 2020-2021 tournament that's finished on the first day of 2022. You know, we're talking about players here that have got such experience of this tournament. And yes, they'll be disappointed with how they got on in World Cup qualification across these last few years. Going out, they had a few tough games, but really underperforming. And losing, of course, to Malaysia in World Cup qualifiers as well. But we're looking at a side now who really are at the peak of their powers and have been. That they would have been so disappointed with 2018 because you look at it, you've got 31, 28, 30, 33. This is the age at which a lot of international teams get their most success. When their players are that little bit older, they've got that international experience. It tends to be one end or the other, players being raw and not having the weight of expectation on their shoulders. But this Thailand side really doesn't seem to mind the pressure. And no game really did they seem out of place. And that experience, you know, you're going up against Vietnam, a side who are a lot younger in terms of the average age, and are, you know, as we've said, it's the second coming of their golden generation. But they're a side who could have caused Thailand problems, but at no point really did Thailand start to panic, certainly mentally. You know, the game was going Vietnam's way, but calm, solid at the back, everyone doing their jobs. And that is the experience that you get from having a side with one of the highest average ages in this tournament. I think the only side that comes close is the Philippines, who have a lot of players over the 30 mark as well. And you compare that to today's opponents in Indonesia, and I've picked out a few players for them. You know, one of their most capped players and one of their oldest players, Evan Dimas, 26 years old, 41 caps. You know, that's one of their peaks. You look at some of their other players, they've got Arhan, the left wing back, 20 years old, 13 caps. Asnawi, vice captain, 22 years old, 16 caps. Ezra Walians, 24, 9 caps. Egi Milanovic, who scored a brilliant goal in today's final second leg, 21 years old, just 10 caps. And Irfan Jaya, one of their more experienced players, 25 years of age, but just 16 caps. And you compare that to what I've just picked out in terms of the Thailand players, and that really shows you the level of experience that Thailand and their players had going in to this tournament. And I think that has made a huge difference. And I think that Thailand potentially are going to struggle in maybe 2 or 3 years' time when some of these players are getting to the point. You know, Dangda probably won't be around internationally, certainly not scoring as many goals when he's 35 plus. That's only a few years away. You know, Chanatip is so quick, so pacey, so silky on the ball. How long can the 28-year-old keep that up? He's probably got 3 years left. So at what point do we start to see the transition from Thailand, which is when we might see them, you know, the last few years since 2014, they've won, got to the semis and then won again. So I think they will go through a period in potentially 2 or 3 years where they start to drop off a little bit. I don't think that's a problem, but I think that's one of the main reasons why they've been so dominant at this tournament is all their players have been there before, they've done it before, they've won it multiple times. And that psychological edge that they've had over every other team, I think has been a huge, huge factor. As we've said, already. 6 wins now. They extend their lead at the top. Singapore in second place with 4 wins. They've now got 6. That is the record. And it's the first win for Polting, their head coach, their new head coach that's come in. He's a Brazilian-born former player. He's played all across Europe for Apoel Nicosia, as well as a few sides in Germany as well. Got a good playing career behind him. He's also managed right across Thailand. He was quite unsuccessful actually at Bangkok and got some stick when he was there, but he's previously managed the under-23s Thailand side back in 2012. And you think that was now a decade ago, and you're seeing some of the players now that were under-23s at the time now performing again under Polting, and really I've been impressed with his man management of situations. At times they've played a 3 at the back, a 4 at the back, a 5 at the back. They've worked with 2 up front, 1 up front, 3 up front, many different systems. They've also rotated. I don't think there was a single player in their squad that didn't get minutes. They made a late substitution today to achieve that. I believe every player in their side had an opportunity to get minutes, which I think is absolutely fantastic and shows you the strength in depth that this Thailand side has at the moment. And that again is a huge advantage. I know personally, now I thought Indonesia benefited from this as well. You had players like Rumakayek, Dimas Irianto rotated a number of times. You had Baggett on the bench as well. And of course, Vikri then joined the squad later on. And I think that Indonesia showed that advantage. But Singapore's a prime example I'm going to pick out as a side here that no real strength in depth, in my opinion, at the moment. When players like Iksan Fandi came off, when Gabriel Kwok had to go away for treatment, other things like that, they really then, that made a big impact to their side. And I'm not saying that if you take Dangda or Chanatip out of this Thai side, they get on as well, but I just feel like they had better strength in depth and a manager that was willing to give players opportunities. And I think that alongside Shin Tae-yong, Polting was up there. I think those two were the best 2 managers, and I'll be interested. I'm very keen to see what Indonesia do over the next few tournaments. They're favourites going into the under-23s tournament because of the age of their side, and it'll be really interesting to see how they get on. But Thailand, at the peak of their powers, as we've already said, in terms of experience and players, now with a manager who's willing to rotate systems, a very good manager in my opinion, the way that they can change system, the way that they can adapt to their opposition, that's when you've got a manager and players who trust the manager and listen to the manager, and the whole setup that they have there looks really, really good, really impressed me. He is certainly a manager at some point I would absolutely love to have on the show to talk about his career and his management style, because I thought they were brilliant. They got the job done against the weaker sides, and then they changed their system against the stronger sides. They changed their system, particularly against Vietnam. And again at half-time today, 1-0 down at half-time, they changed the system. They brought different players on, and they then took the lead, and then a brilliant goal from Egy Vikri to make it 2-2. But they didn't. Again, you're 1-0 down, you've still got a 4-1 advantage, but Indonesia had nothing to lose. They could just go for it. They could go all out. And Thailand, of course, had a massive advantage. I'm not trying to take that away from Indonesia and their performance. I'm not trying to take that away from anyone else. Thailand, on paper, one of the strongest sides. But I think what really impressed me has been their performance against Vietnam and their performance today, when they'd already got the job done, but they were still resolute enough. They still made the tactical changes they needed to ultimately dominate this game, and they could have won it, but I'm glad they didn't, because I think Indonesia deserved a draw today for their brilliant performance at this tournament. And the last thing that I'm going to touch on very, very quickly is some individuals. I think that Thailand benefit from the Thai League being probably one of the strongest leagues in this division. If you think about, the ASEAN region, I think that the Thai League is one of the strongest leagues. I think it's one of the best invested leagues. And I think that Thailand have had, out of all the sides, probably the most exposure to high-level football. And they're an established footballing nation. I know they're not technically competing under the national flag. They're competing under, of course, the national football team crest. But that doesn't change the years of infrastructure and established football league that they've got set up. And a few of their players I want to pick out. Of course, Tirasil, doing what he's doing at this age. Another player that can't go under the radar. He is to Thailand what Sunil Chetri is to India. And I'd love to see a game between India and Thailand. I think that the strength in depth has to go slightly towards Thailand here. But the two of them, two absolutely brilliant players from the Asian region that probably don't get the credit they deserve. And that's why we do D&Q, to talk about players like Sunil Chetri and like Tirasil Dangda, because they are absolutely brilliant. Tiraton at left back, oh, what a player. That left foot wizardry, plays the system as a wing back or a full back brilliantly well. And he wreaked havoc across the whole tournament. Didn't do as much today in an attacking sense, but I've seen him at times playing basically a left wing role. And he is absolutely fantastic, and a player that you would love, Polting will love to have in the system. Kritsada, one of the younger players for Thailand. I've spoken about their experience. They've also got a 22-year-old defensive midfielder, Kritsada, who particularly, as the tournament grew on, dropped back into that centre-back role and played absolutely brilliantly. Thailand were, of course, hit with a few injuries, which enforced that change. Kritsada, a player for the future, 22 years old. Brilliant player, seems to be able to play both the defensive midfield role really well, but also so comfortable in at centre-back as well. A far more physically, you have to be far stronger at centre-back, but he's got the technical ability of the defensive midfielder as well, and playing absolutely brilliantly. And the final player, of course, to mention, one of my favourite, probably my player of the tournament, as well as, the official award went to him as well in Chanatip. I thought he's absolutely a breathtaking footballer, an absolutely brilliant footballer, and I hope that he is forever remembered as one of the best players that the ASEAN region has ever produced. What he can do with the ball, what he can do off the ball, captain of this side, absolutely brilliant player. He's going to be our star man on the Instagram page as well. So to summarise, Thailand have won. They've won their 6th title. They won their 6th title 6-2 against a brilliantly courageous Indonesia side that just didn't have enough to cause Thailand any problems. I think for me, it's a combination of the experience. Everyone talks about the golden age of Vietnam, and I think that Vietnam will be the strongest side, certainly going into the next tournament. But really, experience of winning this tournament, and experience of competing at the highest levels internationally. A manager who brings in different systems and is intelligent in his approach to different oppositions and gets the job done. A brilliant management. Some individuals who are absolutely brilliant, as I've just discussed, and the investment and the well-established Thai league. And I think that those are the 4 main things that have given the advantage to Thailand. Congratulations to them. A brilliant tournament all round. Congratulations to Singapore for hosting it in and amongst this pandemic. Congratulations to all the sides for making this a brilliant tournament. And my final word won't be on any of the sides that you'd expect, because I would like to shout out Timor-Leste. And I hope that they, in a few years with their very young squad, certainly at the under-23s, I think that they will cause problems. And I'll be interested to see. They're my tip for the future, because it would be very easy to say Vietnam will win next time. I think a side that will start to cause upsets as we go forward, provided they keep this squad fit and they keep improving with players like Ghali, like Mazzinho, Timor-Leste would be my ones to watch. Hope you've enjoyed the tournament. I hope you've enjoyed D&Q's coverage. That's all from us on the Suzuki Cup, but there'll be plenty to come from all around the world. There's plenty more regions to compete. We've got AFCON 21 starting soon. We've got the OFC qualifiers. We've got, of course, the World Cup is next year, and in and amongst all the brilliant tournaments that happen all around the world. You do not want to miss it. Hit that subscribe button, and we thank you for your support. We've also got a Facebook page, so if you've watched plenty of our videos, why not go onto Facebook, D&Q Football on there as well, same as the Instagram handle, and give us a like and give us a follow on there. That is all from me. I'll see you next time, and Happy New Year.